to get a little organized. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and then we're going to announce that we had an executive session on December 11th, right after the luncheon, and just prior to this meeting on the 18th to discuss real estate and litigation. I have another announcement tonight. I'd like to start off by the meeting by telling everybody that tonight's David Brown's last meeting as a supervisor.
Are you happy, boy? Is John jealous?
No, I'm very, very jealous. I'll get to why in a second. And I just wanted to just thank him for stepping forward and volunteering for a thankless job and to help shape where West Vincent's going. So thank you, David.
Thank you, John.
I'm not a speechwriter, but as I was thinking just about that short little paragraph, it got me thinking about how many meetings has this man gone to. So I asked Erica to do some things. You attended Northern Federation meetings, Planning Commission meetings for a couple years, Phoenixville Regional Council meetings,
Park and Rec.
Parks and Recs, Open Space, and at least 144 Board of Supervisors meetings.
And Planning Commission.
Didn't I say Planning Commission?
You did say planning.
I thought you were always paying attention, so. Anyway, so I totaled all, and David, that's well over 300 meetings, so, for a thankless job. If there's one thing, I tried to find one thing, if there was one thing that we should be thankful for David, it's for his passion on the subject of preserving open space. So David, I'd like to recognize that passion and your service by presenting you with a plaque of recognition.
Thank you.
And thank you for all you've done. And now we're going to have to stand up and they're going to take your picture.
And we're going to clap again.
Thank you.
John, I told him I had a button if he wanted to run for re-election sometime.
I'm afraid he would tell you what to do with that button.
He was politer than that.
Now down to business.
He laughed.
First thing we have to do is approve the minutes from the December 4th meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from December 4th, 2017 as
Second.
Any comments on the previous meeting minutes? None, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is the police report. Chief Schwinger's here.
Good evening. During the month of November, the police department responded to 254 calls for service, including the following: the arrest of a 56-year-old male from Chester Springs for driving under the influence of alcohol on Daniel Drive, and the arrest of a 24-year-old male from Chester Springs for possession of a controlled substance and drug paraphernalia while stopped for a speeding violation in the 2300 block of South Chester Springs Road. Thank you.
Just for the record, I'd like everybody to know I'm not 56 years old and I'm not 24 years old. Mike may be, but...
Thank you.
Next is the bills list approval. Tonight's bills list, the township bills list is $122,258.68. The reimbursable bills list is $3,189.89. And the subdivision utility plant bills list is $10,772.06. Total combined, all three bills list total $136,220.63.
I move that the board approve bills list dated December 18, 2017, in the total amount of $136,220.63.
There's a second.
Second.
Any comments on the bills list? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is a resolution on the Hill subdivision.
I move that the board approve resolution 27-2017, conditional final approval for the Hill subdivision as submitted.
Second.
Any comments on the subdivision from the audience? None? Nothing from the planning commission? We're all
Thank you.
set?
We could just say thank you.
We
Do
could
I
say-
have to get up there?
Say that again.
Do I have to go there to say thank you?
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is the Trepton Land Development Plan request.
I move that we grant the extension to the Canadian Land Development Plan until March 31st, 2018.
Second.
Any questions from the audience? All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, Joe, we have a hearing to consider the ordinance 180-2017, reducing the Park and Recreation Commission numbers to 7 members.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I open the hearing and introduce into the record Board Exhibit 1, which is a letter to the Mercury dated December 5th, 2017. Board Exhibit 2, a proof of publication from the Mercury for December 8th, 2017. Board Exhibit 3, the attested ordinance went to the Law Library on December 5th, 2017. Board Exhibit 4 is the ordinance itself. Board Exhibit 5 is the legal notice. This ordinance was talked about at previous meetings. It is simply to lower the membership on the Park and Rec Committee down to 7 members. Anyone on the board have any questions?
Not I.
Anyone from the audience have any questions or public comments? Hearing and seeing none, we'll adjourn into the public meeting portion of the agenda. This ordinance is now in position for your consideration.
I move to approve ordinance 180-2017 as submitted, changing the Parks and Rec Commission to 7 members.
Second.
Any comments on this motion from the audience? Sarah?
Why?
Because they thought it was too big and cumbersome, 9 members to go to, and they wanted to go to 7. Harry?
I would think you'd want to have quite a few members for something like that, because you'd have quite a few subcommittees that were working together and reporting back.
All I can tell you is,
They feel they're happy.
yes, and there's a gentleman in the back, Chip.
Yes, my name is Chip Farnham. I'm the chairman of Parks and Rec. To give you some background,
Microphone.
Chip, I'm gonna have to ask you if we're gonna start using the microphone.
Oh, all right. Parks and Rec felt that size 9 for a committee was becoming large and cumbersome, and we felt it would be easier to work at the traditional size of 7. Erica, I think that's the size that's normal. And so it was a unanimous vote. It was not controversial on the committee. We had people who have varying views on the commission, often voting differently from each other. But on this issue, everybody was in agreement. We thought it would make a more workable group. We do have an active audience participation, people from the township who come to our meetings, who take part in the planning and committee work and things like that. And of course, that will continue. But just from a discussion standpoint, it was tough.
Any questions for Chip on that? Sarah?
So then there are no openings on Park and Rec this year because you just eliminated the openings.
That's correct. So the way this will be done is, it's not removing people from the commission. We have 2 planned retirements or expiration of their terms, and with those 2, that would reduce it to 7. One of the persons, I think it was Christina Casey, in the summer had recommended we think about this. She asked me as chair to bring it to the supervisor's attention. I think she did on her own. And so as we approached the retirement prior to this meeting, we made the unanimous recommendation. We think it's going to be more functional. We would certainly encourage people from the township to come to the meetings and to take part. We have people who come to the meetings but are not on the commission who are the volunteer leads for different events, and that's a really functional thing.
Any other questions for Chip? Brian?
Will this shuffle the appointment dates, since we're going from 9 to 7 people, with what years that they're going to be reappointed at?
These were expiring on schedule. So, Erica?
With a 2 polls?
It'll leave you with a year with no appointees.
If it does, it'll be done at the reorganization meeting,
Yeah.
not tonight.
Yeah.
I understand that part, but I'm
I
just
think
raising the question.
speaking of the rotating terms, of the committee members? Okay, okay.
But these two were expiring anyway.
Yeah, we will have to change it.
Yes, but
That's-
you may need to go and change your years that they're being reappointed, et cetera.
Yes, I think they'll have to change,
Okay.
from what I can say.
It'll be for terms of 5 years with no more than 2 up at the same time.
Okay.
Any other questions for Chip? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Joe, my number 6 says a hearing to consider ordinance 181-2017 authorizing for the sale of sewer plants.
Yes, at this time, I'll open the record, introduce the following exhibits. Board Exhibit 1 is a letter to the Mercury dated December 5th, 2017. Board Exhibit 2 is a proof of publication from the Mercury for December 8, 2017. Board Exhibit 3 is the attested ordinance sent to the Law Library on December 5th, 2017. Board Exhibit 4 is the ordinance itself. Board Exhibit 5 is the legal notice. I know there's a lot of people here that want to talk about the sale of the sewer system. The next item on the agenda is the discussion on the sale of the sewer system. This ordinance is only being put into place so that if the township elects to sell the sewer system, it designates who has authority to sign documents. So if you're here to talk about the sewer sale, I'd ask us to be patient, wait till the next item, because that's where you're going to get into the nuts and bolts of the sale, the proposal, and all the interesting things everybody wants to discuss. This ordinance is simply procedural, so that the manager can sign certain documents that the board authorizes the sale. With that, anyone from the board have any questions?
No.
Anyone from the audience have any questions? Hearing and seeing none, we'll adjourn the hearing, reconvene into the public meeting portion of the agenda. This ordinance is now in a position of your consideration.
I move to approve ordinance 181-2017 as submitted, authorizing the township to move forward with the sale of the sewer plants.
Just a second.
Second.
Any comments from the audience?
Excuse me, I have a question. It says...
Excuse me, I know I get away from this. Would you mind coming up and using the microphone? We have 2 problems. I'm deaf in both ears and...
All right, so on both sides?
Yes.
My question here is, if this is strictly procedural, then why is it titled the authorization to sell the sewer plants?
Because that's not titled properly on the agenda. The heading of the ordinance itself is not titled that way.
Okay, how is the heading titled?
The same as what's in the ad. I can read the whole heading if you like. It says, an ordinance authorizing the execution, delivery, and performance by West Vincent Township of an asset purchase agreement, the purchase agreement between the township and the purchaser, authorizing the assignment of the township's rights and obligations in all relevant agreements to the purchaser, authorizing and approving all conveyance, instruments and conveyance of real estate interests, authorizing communications of information and cooperation with the purchaser, authorizing all actions relating to the execution of the purchase agreement and the assignment of all relevant agreements, authorizing the incidental action to be taken by specified officers of the township, and recording inconsistent ordinances and resolutions.
Impressive.
So again, if you really want to talk about the sale of sewer system, we can talk about this. This authorizes the township to do it, but the decision to do it is what's next on the agenda.
Joe Ancelosi, 21 Gregory. Hey guys, I was just reading this legal notice that I think, Joe, you just read. Why is there no mention of the sewer system in the notice?
Because you're not authorizing the sale of the sewer system. That's the next item on the agenda. You're authorizing that if the township were to sell the sewer system, certain individuals can execute the documents and perform the executory functions necessary to accomplish that.
Wasn't the motion, John, the motion to sell the sewer system?
I
It
agree.
wasn't a motion to authorize the, say,
It's not.
it was misstated.
It was.
It is.
Can we restate it and revote, please?
Yes, sir. Well, they didn't vote yet, but
Right.
you can amend your motion. Does the seconder have any objection to amending the motion?
Authorizing officers of the township to move forward
I would-
with an agreement.
I would just have a motion to pass the ordinance as prescribed by the township solicitor.
I move that, I amend the motion to approve the ordinance 181-2017 as read by our solicitor.
Second.
Does that do it?
That does.
Joe?
That's so.
We have a second, right?
Yes. Any questions from the audience? All those in favor?
Aye.
Did you get that changed, Tammy?
Yes, I did.
Who would like to read this
I move that the board award the bid of the West Vincent Township sewer plants, Weatherstone, Ludwig's Corner, wastewater treatment plant, Matthews Meadows, St. Stephen's Green, and Stonecroft, and one water plant, St. Stephen's Green, to the Bucks County Sewer and Water Authority.
Second.
one? There's a second. Comments from the audience? Now's your turns. If you wouldn't mind, just if you can use one side or both sides, just whoever comes up, we're going to ask you to identify yourself and keep it as brief as you can.
Before you start, Mr. Chair, would you entertain a brief presentation by PFM about what our bid is? So
Sure.
the audience-
Would you mind, Joe, we did that? Sorry about that. Just trying to get your exercise in tonight.
Sounds good.
Good evening, Scott Shear with Public Financial Management. Yeah, I mean, just to kind of recap where we left off back on November 20th, at that point, the decision and the vote was made to reopen the bidding process, which we did, so that was November 20th. A few days later, then we sent out the RFP, or the request for bids, to the 3 pre-qualified firms. On December 11th, the bids were due, and we received the one bid from Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority for a purchase price of $4 million. Also, within that proposal was a guaranteed 5-year rate freeze, and also the lowering of both Matthew Meadows and Stonecroft down to $255 per quarter. So I think that was very similar, not identical to what we had talked about back on November 20th, but that was the actual results of the bid process that we received.
And for those of you that were at the November 20th meeting, the gentleman from Aqua that came up to speak about the Bucks County offer was not authorized to be here, despite the fact that I asked him directly, the president knew he was here. We've been in communication with upper-level management, including the president at Aqua, and they apologized profusely for him coming forward and stating things that were not Aqua's position. So Aqua, as well as Key American, did not introduce a bid, and they're not interested in buying the system. So out of 200 and some odd qualified people that we solicited to see if they had interest in the system, we ended up with one bid.
Joe?
But it was December 4th.
What's that?
I thought you said November.
Joe's
That's right.
Can I hand out some discussion topics to the audience?
I have no objection. Do you, Joe?
You can hand out whatever you want.
There's 40, I think. Maybe a few more. And may I provide you with documents for reference?
Sure. If you can give us what you handed out, that'd be helpful.
What's included? I only have 5 copies, I apologize. To maybe Tammy. Somewhat off topic, I just apologize for that. I didn't want to kind of ambush you with anything, guys. But can you provide us with an estimate of the PFM fees associated with this transaction?
Yes. Who would like to do that over there?
Well, I'm happy to. So our fees, again, similar to what we had discussed and similar to what we discussed back on November 20th, and similar to, I think, what I had discussed back in the public meeting when we were authorized to do this late part of last year. Our total fees for public financial management was $98,500.
When's it payable?
At closing, which is expected to be on around February 1st.
And how is it being billed?
I'm sorry?
How will it be billed?
There will be an invoice due at settlement.
And do you have an estimate of the attorney fees?
Yes.
Can we do that?
Sure. As far as Dilworth Paxson, fees to be paid at closing is $88,500. For our attorney, it's $34,090 at this time. There will be more bills associated with this process.
What's the total estimate ballpark, Eric, if you wouldn't mind?
Let's see, we also have a retainer for Dilworth Paxson that we're working through right now. So that would be about $155,000 presently.
All in, 155?
Yes.
And was Dilworth the advisor as referenced in all of the documentation?
The financial advisor would be public financial management.
Who was legal advisor?
Our attorney in consultation with Dilworth Paxson, who's here.
And that's a $34,000 fees for advisory fees?
No, the Dilworth Paxson,
That's
the
the
retainer.
85?
Yes, yes.
That's the 88.5, so that's the,
That
that's the
is
closing
the
fees?
fees to be paid at closing. So that's all of their work on the asset purchase agreement. And if you would like to expand on that a little bit, Tom, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, those are the anticipated fees at closing. I think we're below that at the moment. And the retainer that you
Correct.
paid every month will be subtracted from the amount that's due at closing. I suspect where we are, that's a
Right.
good number.
Yeah.
Are they due if it doesn't close?
No.
Okay, I'm just going to jump, if we could, to the summary list that I handed out to everybody. Just so everybody in the audience knows, I provided the supervisors and council with background, with the reference information. So everything, when you see page, that reference is a page, that's a document that was provided from the township website or by a right-to-know request that I submitted. So everything, really, this is all factual. There's no opinion in this at all. Okay, so my first concern is there's been very much a lack of visibility into this process. I think you would agree that the first time this was mentioned was at the meeting of August 15, 2016, and it was a presentation by PFM. Is that correct? Yeah, we agree with that? So, and then there were PFM initiated several meetings and activities over a 15-month period that took place on September 16th, February 17th, March 17th, April 17th, May 17th, July 17th, including face-to-face with supervisors, and August 30th. Apparently we had a proposal. And the very next exposure that we received publicly was on November 20th. So we went a 15-month period. Incidentally, it was brought up on the agenda as new business, not old business, and I think it was probably just a typo or misclassification.
There's several meetings. I don't know how you arrived at this conclusion, but I can tell you Sarah frequently asks at meetings, what's the status of the sewer system? So
It's not in the minutes, it's not on the agenda. That's all I'm just going to the documentation, guys.
It should be on the video.
yeah, it occurred.
I know.
I appreciate that.
The minutes are the,
And I know before I
records
was
of-
appointed solicitor, there were discussions with the prior solicitor about the sale of the sewer system. But this wasn't a secret.
Well, it was pretty much invisible for 15 months if we just relied on the documentation and didn't
The
attend
minutes.
it. Because there was a representation at the meeting that you guys have been going through this process for a long time, which I agree you have. But if you read the documentation, it doesn't represent that. Okay, so if we're relying solely on the minutes,
Well,
and agenda.
Let me clarify this a little bit for you so you and the audience understand it. When you sell real estate, which this is, it's the negotiations and planning on selling and strategy is all conducted in executive session. It is not conducted in a public meeting. This is an exception to the sunshine law. And it really has to be that way. If you were selling your house and having a discussion with your wife over what you accept as an offer versus what it's listed for, you wouldn't have that discussion in front of the buyer. And along the same lines, the township is selling an asset. We can't say, here's what we think it's worth, we hope we get this, in public. So it's by design, and the Pennsylvania statutes recognize this, by design, to not take place in a public meeting because you're selling real estate.
I appreciate that. I think those types of items should be kept confidential. I totally agree. But I think the activities, the process could have been exposed, which in a better way, more visibility into the process. We could have just said, if you look at page 5 of the document, there, which shows the activities that PFM performed, there's nothing in here that would present the buyer with any advantage.
Well, they did an appraisal of the system, and that was a lot of their work. Why would we make that public? If you got an appraisal on your house and then listed it for $50,000 more, you wouldn't want the buyer to have the appraisal.
But we all own or have an interest in this. That's pretty personal.
Yeah, but why would you ever tell bidders?
I'm not asking you,
what it's appraised
Joe, in all due respect, I'm not asking that. There are many activities here. You said, hey, we could have said at the end of February 2017, we've done it, we've received a due diligence presentation from PFM. No mention of that. That doesn't give any insight to the buyer into our position. During March of 2017, we issued 3 bidders and pre-qualified 3 bidders. You could have announced that, hey, we're moving along with this process. 15 months went by, and the public didn't know anything about this.
Okay, well, I'm not sure, but yes, in the minutes, that public would not know that. If they were here in the audience, they probably would have heard that. I do agree that that's probably the problem. The minutes are not reflecting every comment that's made by the audience or us.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
Is that the function of minutes, Joe?
No. Minutes record action items, not every statement made in a public meeting. It's not a transcript. It's an action, it's a record of action items.
So these things were discussed in public.
Is it appropriate for this document to be submitted into the minutes and published on the website?
The board can decide whatever it wants in the minutes or not.
Are you guys agreeable to that?
I haven't read it yet, so the answer is no. For me.
Did you
I haven't read the whole thing.
I want to read it.
What's the protocol for,
objection to concept?
What's the protocol for, I sent you guys emails.
You have submitted this,
Yes.
and it is part of the public record. And anyone that files a right to know has access to it.
So you need to file a right to know to get access to this document?
Or, we got one tonight, we'll hand it to people just like you did.
Right.
Okay, fine. All right, so basically at the December 4th meeting, November 20th was the first time it came up, and then again on the 4th, it was kind of like disclosed a little inappropriately, you know. You published that there was going to be an ordinance to sell the system, which we saw the ordinance, then there's no representation of the sewer system in the notice, which is pretty crazy to me. I mean, why don't you state that we're going to sell the sewer systems? Why are we saying that we're going to sell an asset as opposed to a sewer system? I don't get that. It seems like there's some, why are we disclosing that?
Well, I think we disclosed it very well. There's a whole room full of people that know exactly what we're doing.
Joe, with all due respect. In the ordinance, it's right here. Call your attention to page 17 of this document. Is there any reference to the sewer system in this document?
And it's not the sale of the sewer system. The next item on the agenda from that is the sale of the sewer system. This is only an ordinance authorizing people to sign things if
The board
approves, decides to
takes
sell
a
the
vote
system.
and decides to move forward on the sale.
Okay, got it. All right, so I think you covered, I mean, we went the 15-month period. You mentioned that the minutes didn't represent the discussions, and I think Sarah acknowledges that. But for someone like me that's getting in this thing at the last minute, it's my first, it just doesn't look good to me. Right, and I'm sure you guys all, with 15-month period, nothing happens, you gotta be going like, what's going on here? This just got sprung on us.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So, that's my concern.
There's a lot of reasons why it took that long.
I get it.
There were tremendous issues with this system.
How many evaluations have we done, Joe?
Even to put it into.
How many evaluations have we
Yeah,
done?
let me finish. Even to put it into something to market, something to put into an APA to get bids on it, even to reach out to people to see if they have interest in the system. We had all sorts of easements that were wrong, and things on wrong properties, and subdivisions not done, and no title to certain things that we were selling. This was a mess. It took 15 minutes, or 15 months, to clean up that mess to get it to a point where we can even show it to potential buyers.
I know it wasn't easy, man. I've seen some of the documentation. I've seen what you're going through. I get it. And I know it's not an easy process. I totally understand that. Okay, let's move on to item number 2. It was represented at the board meeting, the very first board meeting on August 15th, that the sewer systems are barely carrying themselves, and maybe it's a good business, not a good business for the township to be in. Tony, could you get me a cup of water, please? I'm really dry. Thank you. So here's what's interesting to me. I'm trying to figure out, how you came to that conclusion. I have the financials that Erica, it wasn't Erica, I guess it was Wendell Gas, and some that Erica prepared, and they're referenced in the documents that I provided to the supervisors. And on page 9 of that document, the 2015 financials show operating income for the sewer systems of $275,000. On page 7 of the document, the 2016 financials show operating income of $183,000. The 2000 year-to-date financials show operating income of $184,000. The December 31st proprietary fund report shows $1.5 million in the account. So, thank you. Appreciate it. So what my concern is, guys, is why do you believe that it's not, based on these numbers, maybe these aren't the numbers you were using, but how did you come to the conclusion that it's not carrying itself and they're barely...
I don't think anybody said that.
It's in the minutes.
Well, okay, again, the minutes aren't an exact representation of what's been said. I'm sorry, it's not. The video is, if you watch the video, you'll see what people say. That's the only way, I'm sorry. It's not my fault, I don't do the minutes. It's just the way...
You did approve the minutes.
I did approve minutes, so I am responsible, yes, I agree.
So is that an accurate statement or not?
Oh, that's not an accurate statement, because I watched the video after you sent me the letter saying what I said. So I can find out what I said.
What'd you say?
I said that some of them are holding and some aren't. So 2 are break even, 1's losing money, and 2 are the winners.
Right.
So we have 2 that are definitely making all that money, or that has that revenue, not making the money, because you have, in that number, you have capital reserves for repairs in the future of an asset that has a 40-year life. And when that asset goes bad in year 30, it's millions of dollars, not hundreds of thousands. So that's built into 2 of our systems. We don't have the capital reserve on 3 of these systems, which they should have.
Yeah,
And that number would be much better if we did have.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. But the representation was made, and it seems like the basis for moving forward with the PFM proposal was this thing is underwater. Excuse me.
No, that was never the thought process. We have an
It's
asset
certainly
that we are not currently in the business of being a municipal authority. And we had no desire, or I had no desire to be in a municipal authority and start that whole department. And looking at the numbers and the type of systems we have and the size of the systems, I don't think it would be smart to get into. We have 3 losers, 2 winners at this point.
I can very clearly show you that these systems have been poorly managed. and.
So you're
that
saying over the last 30 years-
I can show you that the fees that we've been charged have escalated at rates that are beyond any reasonable expectation. But let's just put that aside for a second. I'm
that's
just trying to
kind of
get to
important,
how did you
actually.
come to the conclusion that this is a good deal for the township? Like, why did the town, was it these guys that just showed up and said, hey, let's sell this thing, you guys can cash in on
Well, they never-
$5.5 million?
I don't know if they ever came to us. We reached out to them. Well, actually, it was before you, it was the other solicitor and the other board that actually started. it.
Before the meeting or after the meeting? Wait, let me get this right.
This started
The very
two,
first,
three
the very
years
first
ago.
time this happened, is this on an agenda somewhere?
Yeah,
What year, when?
it was when I
Sienna
can
was
answer
here.
because my memory is not fabulous, but I know Ken Miller and Steve Sienna did a presentation to the audience.
Right, yeah, that's what I
So
remember.
that was
John,
when.
what is your point
Yeah, I
for
don't see the point.
nitpicking on this? We're at where we're
Couple
at.
meetings.
Well,
We're
it's
here.
all about visibility, guys, and transparency into the process, and not exposing us to your decision criteria. How did you come to this, how did you, first of all, source this idea, and how did you make the decision? You're not sharing any of that information with us.
And I can't help you because I wasn't on the board back then.
You
It
know-
was
you
Ken
know what
Miller and
made
Steve
me-
Sienna.
You know what may be helpful, instead of dwelling on the past? Erica put together some numbers, if we don't sell the system. At the rate of $25,000 a year to build a capital reserve, which is an extremely small amount of capital reserve. She put together the rates as they currently are, the rates if you do the 25% capital reserve, and what that would be the sewer rent for each system. And then compares it to the 5-year rate freeze that the buyer is willing to do, and the buyer is willing to substantially reduce the sewer rent for 2 of the systems, substantially reduce it. So Erica, maybe you can share that information with us, and
Sure.
that may shed some light on the motivation of the township to inquire about this.
And when was this analysis prepared, Eric, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, in preparation for this meeting and this process.
So was it available on August 15th of 2016?
Well, I'll tell you, through my 2 cycles now for the budget development and looking at the rates, last year, going through this entire process and knowing, I'm informing the board, we're gonna have a problem in the future. We have a problem right now, because the way that we have budgeted for each plant, we have 3 plants that are teetering. They are literally teetering, and St. Stephen's Green unfortunately happened to be one over the course of 2 years that we had to have a transfer from the general fund to the sewer account. So if we are looking presently today at the current rates and adding a $25,000 to capital reserve, taking into account actual expenses and what that has to take, there are only so many users at St. Stephen's Green and at Stonecroft. Now Matthews Meadows, and that's 33 users. Now at Matthews Meadows, there's 46 we have. And what we're looking at is for, moving forward, Matthews Meadows going up to $515 a quarter. For St. Stephen's Green, $650 a quarter. And for Stonecroft, $650 a quarter. And that would just take it to, number 1, baseline, and number 2, beginning to have a capital reserve every year. And there's just not the numbers to pull from, not the economies of scale on that.
Erica, if we sell, what are those 3 systems?
So if we sell, Matthews Meadows would be $255 a quarter, so it'll be reduced from $336.25 a quarter. St. Stephen's Green would remain at $280.08 a quarter, and Weatherstone would not change. Ludwig's Corner would not change. Stonecroft would go down from $375 a quarter to $255 a quarter. And Pulte, which that plan, the Bruner track, has not been dedicated to Township yet, so I didn't include that.
And that's guaranteed for 5 years?
Correct, 5 years. 5 years.
So not only are you not increasing rates, which you would do if you hold the system, you're substantially decreasing rates with the sale and guaranteeing that for 5 years.
Correct.
And what happens in year 6?
Year 6, under the Municipal Authorities Act, the Bucks County Municipal Authority is regulated on how they increase rates. They have to be uniform and reasonable. So they would either stay where you have them, or they would be increased equivalent to what they're charging all their other customers out there. So we anticipate looking at the different rates that it's going to be in excess of 10 years before you see a rate increase.
So how is it, if the numbers are that dire in the current state, a company interested in making a profit can come in, spend that money, and buy these plants, and then make that dramatic a reduction in rates?
Let me walk
I
you
don't
through
get
that.
it.
Let me walk you through that. First of all, this is a not-for-profit company. This is a public entity. It's a municipal entity. It's not, they're not making a profit. And secondly, they have all sorts of personnel. They manage several plants. They manage hundreds of lines of pipe. There's economies of scale. We're having a hard time economically providing sewer service to 33 customers. To them, they have a whole huge system that they have all sorts of operators out there that manage much larger than what we have. And strictly because of economies of scale, they can do it cheaper than what we do. That's why they're reducing some of the sewer.
Yeah, I understand economies of scale in principle, but economies of scale that big, dealing with this issue, it doesn't pass the common sense test for me.
Well, you have two systems that do well, and it's part of the whole deal. Without the two systems, Ludwig's Corner and Weatherstone, there's no way anybody would buy any of these three systems. No one in this room would buy it. I mean, you'd have to pay somebody to take that system.
But the fact of the matter is that as an aggregate.
Right. It works at that point, yes.
Yeah. But the economies of scale thing doesn't make sense that it's that dramatic a change to me, just from a gut test standpoint.
No, if they would never even offer to take these three systems, and the economy of scales would do nothing for it without the other two.
I'm sorry, he had the floor, so we can get on with it.
I'll yield to the gentleman.
That's exactly.
Yeah, I appreciate that, thanks. Just want to move on to item number 3. I basically sent an email to the board providing them with a concept that returns some of this massive windfall profit back to those that had a vested interest in this transaction. And the concept was, hey, guys, instead of selling this thing for $4 million, make the transaction of $4 million in value, take $2 million in cash, and take a $2 million less and prorate that as a rate reduction amongst all the HOAs, in an appropriate way, so that those systems, those people that had that baked into their home price or dedicated it like Matthews Meadows did, got some return on that asset that they dedicated to the township. So I propose that idea to you guys. Before you even answer that question, what's the protocol for, should I expect any response from you guys when I send you an email?
Yes, normally, but we knew it right in this meeting. So.
Well, and besides that, some of those issues were legal issues.
Right.
Some of which I can share with you, others I can't.
But on this issue, the one you bring up, you, for Matthews Meadows, want a return on an asset that you determined 10 years ago was worthless and tried to find somebody to take it from you. So you, the HOA, said, yes, we have this worthless asset that we don't want anymore. Let's give it to the township, give them the responsibility, give them the liability, okay? And then when that township puts it into a bucket and sells it, you think that you have some right to some value in that.
Have you read the...
And that's what, and first, that asset has no value. The Matthews Meadows one.
Mike, have you read the handbook for township supervisors?
Joe, stick to the
Anyway,
sale.
I am sitting.
Quit grasping.
I'm not grasping at straws,
You
John.
are.
Okay,
Am I grasping at straws?
Okay, let's not worry about the handbook, but go ahead.
In the handbook, it says that some of the responsibility of the township is sewer and water.
Okay, fine.
All right?
So we did what we should. We took the system from you. But you want something in return of a system that you did not want. We didn't have to take that system.
Mike, we agreed to two things. To pay into a capital fund and pay...
And you never did.
Operating. Yes, we did.
There is no capital fund. You guys have been running... It was zero. Well, you have maybe $3,000 in there.
Yeah, let me try
I don't understand where this capital fund is.
Let me try and answer your question more globally.
Your rates don't cover anything for a capital fund.
There's other people in the room that are going to have the same question. And let me put it on the floor. On much more global, not who did what way back when. There's an asset that belongs to the town. How it got there, under what circumstances, you can debate all day long, but it's owned by the township. The township is selling that asset. If the township were to take any portion of that money and give it back to the people that were in that system, they're taking a township asset in public funds and giving it to a select number of people in the public. Now, I looked, and this board has really tried to look at all sorts of options. I have researched constantly and found no case that says we can do that. So I then started thinking, well, what if we do it? The people up here, these three supervisors, could be subject to a personal surcharge suit because they're taking public funds and giving it to something less than the public. And because of that, they aren't going to take that kind of risk because they can be personally liable for doing that. It's no different than writing a check out of the township checking account and giving it to your neighbor. I mean, it really is literally no different. You may have logic behind your arguments, and I understand it. You've contributed toward the systems, but once you contributed toward them, it's a public asset now, and funds are public funds. So I can't find a case that says I can do what people have been proposing, and I can tell you this board directed me to find a case if it exists. Now, just to wear a belt and suspenders, I reached out to Dilworth. Huge, big Philadelphia firm, extremely reputable, extremely knowledgeable, and we used their resources to double check if there's anything out there that would permit us to do what you're proposing, or other people will propose tonight. And they came back and said, there is no such case. So how can I advise the board, go ahead and do what the people want if it may subject them to personal liability? And that's the problem. And I don't want to necessarily debate the law, I'm just telling you, my firm, which does this area law, do it very well, and Dilworth, which has tremendous resources and a great number of attorneys, couldn't find a way to do it. Let him finish all his stuff, and then we'll get to everything else.
Yeah, I realize that there's no way to return funds back to a community once you've got them. I kind of get that, but there is a way to do a deal with the acquiring entity and do a rate reduction deal with them. Try that.
We did.
And you got what?
We got the rates reduced.
336.
No, wait a minute, that's not what I asked.
Well, we
The
got the rates
question was,
substantially reduced.
can you get them further reduced by taking the lower purchase price? That's how you do it. That's the question. Did you ask that question?
Oh, yes, we've negotiated with them every which way.
No. Did you ask your legal advisor? I know you asked the Philadelphia people. Did you ask the Philadelphia people that question?
We can do that. And we met with Bucks, and we talked to Bucks, and we negotiated with Bucks.
So you represented the board, the supervisor
This
has
is
an
not Bucks'
interest.
first offer.
The supervisor, you represented the supervisor has had an interest in returning something back to the public. And that might have been an avenue to do that, but you didn't present that question to the Philadelphia council.
Oh, they were involved with me every step of the way.
To my way of thinking, that's basically the same thing as giving money to you. That's the same thing.
It is,
Different
and I think it
product,
would be
same
seen
thing.
that same way.
But we actually did to an extent. We got the rates lowered, which reduces the value of our system. We got a 5-year rate freeze, which reduces the value of our system. If we were looking to maximize the value of our system, there'd be no rate freeze and the rates would not be lowered. Then maybe we would have had other bidders that may want to pay a little more. But because this board was sensitive to the impact on the residents, we negotiated from that perspective. Could we negotiate a little more of this, a little less of that? I guess everyone can always do that in every deal. But this seemed to be a good balance that protected the residents for 5 years, selling to an entity that increases their rates far less than public water companies do, because they're a nonprofit entity. So it really seemed to make sense in the negotiation process. And this is not, we're making this adversarial, and it doesn't need to be. I mean, they represent you, and you elect them, and they're trying to do their best, with the best they can to try and protect everyone, and to do what's in the best interest of everyone. I can respect differences of opinion, I can respect input, but when did it get to be divergent interests? There are no divergent interests here. We're all rolling with the same oar.
I think that's an opinion.
Well, they're not benefiting from it
No,
at
no.
all.
Well, there's a $5.5 million windfall that's going to be utilized for something.
For the
But not for us.
taxpayers.
I understand that, but for some
We represent the whole
interests-
township.
I don't think we've ever answered the question, not that I even care about that right now, guys. I just, and honestly, I don't think this is, I want to move forward with the deal. I just want to do it the right way. And I don't think, what my big concern is you guys have enlisted any of the public's opinion or support for this transaction. In fact, you never formed a committee. It made up of, we got people in this audience that have,
We don't have a committee for every decision we make.
it's a big one.
It is a big one. We didn't have a committee for grid co-ed. That was a big one too.
How big was that?
What's that?
How big was that?
$1,000,009.
Most.
This is 3 times
It was a
that.
little bit bigger than $1 million, but.
One's out, one's in.
What's that?
It's a big number.
That's hard, yeah.
Outgoing, one's incoming.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, I know you're on our side. I get all that. I think you're good people. I'm not, it's not, this is nothing. I know this is a thankless job, I get it, and I hate to put you in this situation. I just think if there's a way to do something that helps everybody here, you should evaluate every opportunity, and I think you're just giving up on it. You haven't enlisted our help at all. You haven't formed a committee. All you've heard is our arguments during these meetings. And then, John, you said our voices were being heard, but I'm not quite sure that's, I think you've heard them, but you haven't responded.
What would you like to say? You haven't swayed me.
Well, why don't we go, you have a list of things.
You haven't swayed me either.
You have a list of things you want to go over. So
Yeah, I do have a
why
few
don't we
other
stay
lists.
focused?
So, item number 4, what this is I submitted a volunteer service application to the board, asking them to consider forming a committee and asking if they would consider me as a member of the committee. And I didn't get a response to that. And I suspect I won't.
I'm not interested in setting up a committee. The 3 of us were elected. We don't have self-interest in any one system or 2 systems. I think we're,
Perhaps you should.
Well, I mean, if
Makes
we
it
did have,
easy
if
when
we
you
did
have
have
a
a
person.
committee, you know that I would think the representation would be mostly non-sewer system representatives.
Should
Right?
be
Because
both.
well, it would be both, but it would be a low minority, because the number of residents that have these sewer systems are X, and the rest of the township is
Census
much bigger.
is what, 4,900?
I think it's, yeah, close to 5,000.
600 residents affected?
600. right?
Homes.
So you're at about 1,200. So, I mean, it's a good number.
It's a
Yeah, so-
third. If you're saying 2 per house.
Okay, committee that
But
did not
we're not
do
gonna
it.
do it, right.
All right. I know, on the advice of council, you're not doing a committee.
No, with this,
No.
they have elected not to
We
do a
elect
committee,
not to.
seems not to make sense. Who you gonna put on it if you're not doing it? I think we should move on.
Okay, item number 5, I'm assuming you received the email, which is referenced on page 20. Does the township have the legal right to assign its obligations? Because I know you can transfer the assets. However, when you sell a business, either you're selling an asset sale or you're selling a business. If you're selling the assets, it's just the assets. You don't have the right to do any billing, you don't own the customers, right? It doesn't appear, at least in our dedication agreement, that you have the right to even assign the agreement, or you can do whatever you want with the asset. But I don't think the homeowners have any obligation to pay the new owner of the sewer system.
All right. Well, let me tell you how it works. I'm not debating your point. First, you award a bid, so you know who the buyer is. Then the legal team gets started on all the different agreements and assignments and easements and quiet title actions and all the garbage that goes into it, which is a tremendous amount of work. It depends on who that bidder is. For example, in the deal I did with Aqua in Limerick, Aqua wanted to keep all the employees, so all the employees got transferred over with the transaction. And a deal that we did in West Conshohocken, the buyer didn't want the contractor that operates their facilities, so they didn't accept them. They want their own. So Bucks may want some people that are used to these systems as part of their team. They may not. Aqua may have had a different view, American may have had a different view. So until you have a real live buyer, and you don't start this until you have them on the hook, and then you start all these things. You may have an issue, I don't know. We haven't looked at it, we're going to look at it. And if it can't be overcome, it can't be overcome, but we're going to look at it. And we're going to try and transfer whatever we can, we're trying to deal with it in whatever way we can.
Got it.
But there's a lot between now and settlement to be working.
That makes sense, I get it. You're gonna look at it. Item number 6 is similar in concept because there's a PA statutes Title 66, which I'm sure, Joe, you've had a chance to review. It has to do with any assets that are dedicated to the township. And basically, if the township decides that it's going to dispose of that asset, it, first of all, has to have a ruling from the court of common pleas to move forward with that transaction. And then secondly, the township has the option to deed the sewer system back to the original owner. In this case, I'll use our example, Matthews Meadows. So,
Well, what you're looking at.
are we complying?
You went from subsection A to subsection B, and then you went F. If you look at C, C says you can do exactly what we do. So your interpretation of that's incorrect. I
Okay,
suggest
appreciate
you
that.
read the entire statute.
I'll read it again. So you're saying C makes A and something, the other.
We are permitted
Yeah.
to do what we are doing
C.
under that same statute that you quoted.
Okay. And basically, you're indemnifying, who's indemnifying the supervisors and township in the event that it's non-compliant?
Nobody's
PFM?
indemnifying anyone for anything.
PFM?
No, nobody's indemnifying anyone for anything. Why would you ever do that? That doesn't happen.
Did you guys read that? Did you read the first section?
I'm going to listen to our solicitor.
I get it. Read the first section.
Yeah, I respectfully disagree.
Okay. I'm just bringing it up as an issue, guys. Item number 7, that was the Court of Common Pleas issue. Now, the question I have for you guys, I know you're
You
acting...
skipped over 2 others. Or you skipped over 6.
6. I am, okay, you're right.
Yeah, you quoted some law.
No, 6 was a Title 66 I was just talking about that you responded to. And has the township complied with the requirements as stated in 1320, page 1329, which is, I think, the paragraph that we were just discussing, on page 22. Which page 22?
You're dealing with valuation issues.
Oh, yeah, valuation. Is there a reason, I think we're supposed to have 2 independent valuations?
Yes, what you're referencing with the valuation issue is under Act 12. Act 12 only applies to PUC regulated companies. It does not apply to Bucks County Water and Sewer. So they are not bound by anything in Act 12. But as further belt and suspenders, when we put it on the street, the asset purchase agreement had language in there for Act 12 in case it was a regulated company that purchased it. But because it's not a regulated company, Act 12 doesn't apply.
Got it, thank you.
But we would have done that if
Speaking
it
of
was not a
valuations, did
regulated
we
company.
receive any valuations?
Yes.
How many?
We did 3 different analyses that PFM performed, and they're known throughout the entire Commonwealth for being the expert in this, and we relied on their evaluations. That's what started the process of putting it on the street.
And they benefit by $90,500 from this transaction.
And they also came up with a valuation exactly the amount that we got after putting it on the street.
So the value, the $4 million number was expected, is what you're telling me?
Yes.
Based on?
3.5 to 4 million is
Based
expected.
on, well, it was some valuation that you guys got, but are you guys willing to at all, under right to know, share that valuation in the future?
If the board approves and accepts that bid, then we have the ability to share that
Okay,
valuation with.
thank you. All right, let's move to item number 7, because, you know, I'm just, this goes back to, Mike, what we were talking about before about, you know, this is probably arguably a third to 40% of the township that this impacts. And, you know, to take, based on, you know, roughly 4,900 people, 600 homes, figure three voters per residence, 1,800 voters, which is basically more people than voted, I think, at the last election. So when you say you're acting in the best interest of the township, Can you describe first Township? What do you mean by Township when you're acting in your judgment? What's the Township that you're acting in the interest of?
All residents.
All residents.
Right.
So all would be.
And in this case, it was focused more on people that have community sewer systems.
But see, the problem too was that the township was taking $45,000 a year out of its operating budget. That's generated by all the taxpayers, including ones that are not in the public sewer system, and funding the shortfalls in the sewer system. So it was not only an interest in people on public sewer, it was also an interest of other taxpayers not on public sewer, so that we didn't have to lose money in the process.
We also had a 200% increase in engineering fees from Cedarville Engineering during the same time period.
You know what Cedarville had to do?
Where do you come up with those figures?
I've got the numbers, I'll give them to you.
I
Right here.
have in 2015, 14 and 15, for Matthews Meadows, $23,509. And in 2016 and 17 with Cedarville, $20,690. Now, this is the engineering cost, which is actually lower in 16 and 17 versus 15 and 14. Well, you should have the same numbers, because I got mine from Danielle.
I got mine from the Township website. Maybe they're not the right numbers. All right, let's just.
Oh, you got them from the website?
Yep.
That's wrong. No, I'm serious. Because, and I had this discussion, because I did the exact same thing as you did. I went back to 2015, went through all the bills list, and they're considered draft bills list, and added them all up under engineering, under Cedarville and Carroll. And I called our treasurer and had her do an analysis through the computer system, and she came up with different numbers. And I said, well, how did that happen? And how it happened is because the draft bills list is done on, let's say, Wednesday before the meeting. And if they get another bill in, they put it on to the one that we get and vote on Monday. So I made the recommendation today that we, in the future, all bills list on the website are replaced with a real bills list after Monday's meeting. Because I had the exact same problem. I know.
I know.
But it doesn't
Glad
go
you're here,
with the
Mike.
facts, though.
Okay, let me just,
Okay,
this is not, I wasn't using the bills list. I'm just giving you the Cedarville Engineering. I know they took over for Carroll Engineering in 2016. These are real numbers. These are not off the bill list. These are from the budget actuals versus budget. Between the increase between Carroll Engineering and Cedarville Engineering, just for engineering services non-reimbursable, increase from $77,000 to $144,000, an 86.9% increase.
Okay, that may be correct, because I thought we were talking about the sewer system.
I'm going to talk about the sewer system
Oh, okay.
next.
That's different.
All right? Now, during the same time period, Levick's Corner increased 70%. The Matthews Meadows actually went down 2.7%. St. Stephen's Green went down 9%. Stonecraft went up 368%. Weatherstone went up 57%. Now, if we move over to 2000,
What's that?
You go ahead.
are these numbers right?
The Stonecroft was
It's
a
right.
$50,000 thing?
It's
Is that
right.
what it was?
There are certainly aspects of permit renewals this year, various
about-
things.
I get
and
that.
So, okay. Go ahead, that's
I've
fine.
reviewed the reports.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to 2017, actual versus budget. I'm curious why we're so far off on budgets, but we're 202% over budget for baseline engineering services in 2017, year-to-date. We are 227% over budget at Ludwig's. We are 279% over budget at Matthew Meadows. We are 89% over budget at St. Stephen's Green. We are 308% over budget at Stonecraft, and 174% over budget at Weatherstone. Ouch. Who's watching this? So, my whole point here is, are we, from an I know we outsource everything, and I appreciate your analogy before, we don't have any employees, we just outsource everything, no employees are going with this deal. So, these are pretty material rate increases in real dollars and percentages.
Oh, okay, don't say rate increases, there haven't been any
No,
rate increases.
I'm speaking in reference to Cedarville Engineering.
Expenses, yes, okay. It hasn't affected the rates. right?
And if I may, there is a $25 reference to sewer transactions, sewer-related transactions in the Cedarville agreement, but no references to any other services performed for sewer systems. So that was a massive failure on the part of the township not to address these services that are performed by this organization in this agreement that we entered into with Cedarville Engineering. That's one of the reasons why these things are getting upside down, because we're not managing costs. And guys, I would think PFM would have pointed that out in your study. All right, let's move on. Number 8. Number 8 was basically my request it was a right-to-know request that the township represented that they relied upon the advice of council and PFM to move forward with this transaction, that they provided, that council and PFM provided the best interest reasoning for doing this deal. And I get it, if that's, Joe explained before, my request was denied, and I understand, why Joe explained it. It's subject to legal review. So that information, because it's considered proprietary to the transaction, will not be revealed until after the transaction, I would imagine.
Well,
That's a satisfactory response, I get that.
Okay, and there's a little more to it than that, too. Some of it you may not get if it's attorney-client privilege. So I'm reviewing that, too.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Fair enough. All right, now, this whole thing in the page 27, it really is the last thing in the sales agreement or the ordinance, I forget exactly where it was referenced, but it was disclosed that no broker or finder fees are being paid or associated with this transaction. I think when we started this meeting, that at closing, PFM's getting paid, and they're not going to get paid unless the thing closes, and I would call that a broker fee or a finder's fee or something that's related to the transaction. Otherwise, it would be due if the transaction didn't happen. Likewise, the legal fees, that's, arguably, that's a little bit more gray area, but guys, if you're representing that there's no finder's fees, and then why are they getting paid?
Jeff, we were very open. We asked them what the fees were, you were told. I don't...
Excuse me, that was not the case, John, you were at the meeting. Go back to the video. When we asked Scott...
He didn't know the percentage, right, correct.
And keep in mind,
Tonight,
they gave us two...
Can I answer this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure,
please do.
So back in the fall of 2016, the question was asked to us when we were initially engaged what our fee was going to be. And at that point, I had estimated $100,000. I think that's in the minutes. And I said the all-in fees are going to be somewhere around $250,000. So I think we're seeing tonight that they're all within that. Last week, or November 20th, when I was asked, I said, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's going to be somewhere around $100,000 or less. So I think we were pretty specific. Didn't have the exact number, but tonight we're coming again, giving you the exact amount. So there's been fall of 2016, November 20th, and tonight we gave what our fees were. Plus the contract was made publicly available contract.
And you gave us the option at that point. You gave us the option at that point to just pay you an hourly, regardless of whether you settle or not. And as an alternative to just pay as you go, you said, I won't bill as I go, and if you don't consummate the transaction, we don't get paid at all. But in turn, you get this 1% at the end because you're risking not getting paid at all.
That's right, which is all spelled out in the contract, the hourly rates and the commission.
So that's hardly a finder's fee.
Seller represents that no broker, finder, or person entitled to any commission or finder's fee by any reason of agreement or action or the seller in connection with this agreement.
Well, can I say one?
It is connected to the agreement, it's being paid at settlement.
So in section 4.15 of the asset purchase agreement, it does lay out brokers and finders fees. And it does mention seller has employed public financial management as municipal advisor to provide the transaction. So it is disclosed in section 4.15 of the asset purchase agreement. Yes.
And before you leave, Joe, I want to thank you for sharing this document with me ahead of time. You gave me the ability to review your emails and be prepared to talk intelligently tonight. So I do appreciate that courtesy. Not everyone gives that courtesy.
You're welcome. I think this is the right thing to do, and that's what I was hopeful that, from this process, that we would do this sort of thing going forward, that you all would offer us the same kind of disclosures and advance, Mike, I think I read some of the things that when you were running, you were saying, hey, in advance of the meeting, we're trying to get information way out in advance of the meeting. I don't see any improvement in that area. I've really reviewed everything. All right, and then the other thing that really concerns me, guys, and I don't know why this happened when you guys came in, all right, and Erica, it's related to you. There was a township manager's report that was stopped being published that showed the activities of the township manager. It's the last time it was published was in December of 2015. All right? It's no longer,
I do one every month.
it's not on the website.
Oh, yeah.
Not under not like it used to be in 2015.
Okay.
I can take you through it.
Yeah,
I would like to see it. I can't find it.
Where is it
will be
located,
at every
Kevin?
meeting.
With each meeting it's presented.
Yeah.
So it's in the if you go to the minutes and agenda,
It's
that's in there.
attached with the minutes, almost incorporated as a record of that meeting. Yeah.
Can I show you a copy of what, or you can probably go look.
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy, I'll show you the reports, links, whatever you like. I'm all about communication and giving my reports, and that's fine.
Yeah, but it's not conspicuous, is the way I would say.
Hey,
I think
no
it would be,
problem.
if you could just kind of break it out and show that it exists. All right?
Sure?
Just something, I couldn't find it.
That's fine, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
John?
Good evening, everyone. I'm John Stout. I'm a resident in Weatherstone. I'm president of the Community Association there. I had a whole bunch of talking points tonight, and an awful lot of the questions or comments that I was going to make have been answered. But I still have a couple of things that I had questions about and a comment or two. We do not disagree with the premise of selling the sewage treatment and the water plants. You shouldn't be in the business of being a municipal authority. We wondered, the board especially, about why you didn't involve residents, and I think I get the executive session piece and selling of an asset, and why you had to keep a lot of that confidential based on the laws that are out there. I do have a question relative to the conversation that you were having with Joe regarding the distribution of funds and value of assets. Are the reserves considered an asset like the plants themselves? If they're not considered an asset, what consideration has been given to the redistribution of the reserves back to the residents who paid into the reserves? I mean, they were paid in for the long-term maintenance of the facilities. And, that money's there now for something that no longer exists within the realm of the operation of the township. So, what consideration?
Cash is an asset.
I'm sorry?
It is a township asset. So
That
if it
becomes
came
a township asset.
into the account, it becomes an asset, and it's a cash asset. And again, what Joe was saying, we have no idea. We haven't been able to find any way to do that, so.
It would be personal, I can't speak for the other two supervisors. Any cash or capital reserve, I think, would be better served returning it to the.
Yeah, I know it's difficult. How do you do that with people who've,
That's not.
That's not the
That's
issue.
not the issue for me. The issue is being personally liable.
Yeah. Okay.
For
Taking taxpayers'
unless we
money and
can
giving it
find
to
a
a
way
small,
to do it.
a select group.
It becomes taxpayers' money once it's paid in.
Once
to the township.
once we take it
It
in.
no longer belongs to the people that paid it in, unless it was going directly to the asset to repair it. The other question the question I have, because I'm confused about, what is the asset you're selling? Are you selling the ground and the facility? Are you selling an easement and the facility? I was a little confused in the conversation as to what you really and truly are selling to Bucks County Municipal Authority.
It depends on each individual circumstance. There's easements we're selling, there's fee simple title we're selling, there's hard assets we're selling. it really depends on each particular system.
I know we're each different in how we were,
Yeah, and
transferred to the township, and
there's even some components of the system outside of title lines and outside of easement areas that we've spent the last 15 months trying to fix up. So it's, even the delineation of the easements has not been determined yet, because I'm not sure how much Bucks County is going to want around a certain plant in order to have appropriate security for the plant. Now, there was a conversation with them today, which was encouraging, is that for security, they use cameras. There were, in one instance, they were not going to use a fence, which was a concern of one of the residents. So that's encouraging, and they'll work with us on that, but we have to go through with them over what form of asset it will take and what we can convert it to. So it's not determined totally yet.
okay. If you do decide to begin to have a conversation about the reserves, we have some thoughts, and we shared some of those in a correspondence that we forwarded to you today. So,
I saw that correspondence and it intrigued me, quite frankly. What were you talking about with the athletic component?
well, we thought that maybe rather than returning the reserves to the residents or to the HOA, there's a lot of common, a township open space around Weatherstone. Put a ball field in.
So it's open to the public?
It's open to the public. It's in close proximity to Weatherstone. It may be an amenable way to use those funds.
Now, I think I don't think you'll be subject to
No.
a personal surcharge suit for that.
Oh, because we're using public funds for the public.
For the public, yeah.
There may be some easement restrictions.
There are.
Yeah, but there's other, I mean, like,
What are the easement
but there's other things we can do. It doesn't have to be right in Weatherstone. It could be on the Weatherstone property that exists that hasn't been
I
developed
wasn't
yet.
talking about on Weatherstone property, I wasn't talking about on township property
Oh,
adjacent
okay.
to
Oh, I got
Weatherstone.
you.
Because you received about 50% of the original property when we became an HOA. Hankin deeded that over to you. That's the ground I was talking about.
Okay.
I think we can at least explore that concept.
And those discussions would be in public. What to do with the money, definitely. That we wouldn't have to worry about.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Sarah?
Yeah, very short. This is really about the ordinance 181, 2017. It's not limited to this action that you're talking now. This would provide you the ability to sell other township property. If, for example, you were going to sell the Griffith Farm, that ability is provided by this ordinance as well, since it doesn't specify any particular asset. It says you can sell assets.
Right, but it can't be sold without this board saying sell it.
Of course,
And then
of
once-
course, but I wanted
once it
to
goes
just
under
say
agreement, then the manager
that this ordinance is not specific to
To
the subject at hand.
And that's
Thank
intentional.
you. I just wanted to share that observation beyond you and me.
I didn't come tonight thinking I was going to say anything in public, but first thing I
Can you
would mention.
identify yourself, though?
Yeah, Brian Bereznak, I'm in Weatherstone, right on Westover. If we're talking about ballparks in Weatherstone, think about a dog park or a dog run. Lots of people have dogs in Weatherstone, and I think they would love it, and other people in the township too. So just put that out there in the public forum. In the past year, we've been here, and I've been here with my neighbors twice, or more than, I've been here more than twice, but, living along Westover, first thing we were concerned about was a berm and trees being put in, and there was uncertainty surrounding that. The next thing, the reason I'm here is I heard second, third hand that there's going to be a chain link fence going up across Westover. So anything you could do to make something more firm or binding with Bucks County in terms of not ruining the aesthetic? Because personally, yes, it is for me and about me and my house and our home and our neighbors, but I don't think anybody in the township would want to, think that things can happen that way, and there's an uncertainty where there doesn't need to be on something like that.
If anyone has any issues of this nature, please bring them to our attention. in writing would be best, and I can keep track of it.
Okay.
And when we sit down with Bucks, we'll see what we can accomplish. Is this the issue you talked to Bucks about today?
Offense?
Or this is a different issue?
That's one of the issues.
It is one of the ones you talked about, okay. All right, then let's, anyone has any concerns about aesthetics or anything else that may occur, get those concerns to us in writing, and we'll incorporate them in the
Should
negotiations.
they be funneled through Erica?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So the transaction, let's assume the transaction goes through, it closes, and there's a transfer of the asset. Bucks County can then do what they want with it in terms of selling, or is there any kind of right of first refusal? Not that the township would want to do that again,
They
but in
can-
terms of, having some certainty for the township.
There's no right of first refusal and there's no reverter, but I put on each one of these pieces a covenant running with the land that it must be used for sewer or open space or any other government function. Our government function, township government function. So although we won't get the land back, we'll certainly have control over it.
Okay. And there's a 5-year freeze on rates. And I recall the discussion earlier about the rate increases, and they can't, or the rate increases have to be in line with other townships or
There are other systems.
Yeah, the Municipal Authorities Act requires that the rates be uniform and reasonable.
Okay.
And that develops into a whole huge body of law. But that's the general wording in the Municipal Authorities Act. They're going to keep your rates where they're at, guaranteed for 5 years.
Right.
And they're going to keep them where they're at going forward beyond that. If they want to make it higher than that, then you have to look at what they're charging everyone else and determine whether they're allowed to do that. And any individual resident can bring a lawsuit on that basis, or the township itself can bring a lawsuit.
So it's not a situation where Bucks County can get a new treasurer in 5 years and he says, wow, that's a bad deal, we need to jack their rate up to.
Right. Their 20-year history is a very attractive on rate hikes. It's much less than a publicly regulated company. So if the successful bidder had been a publicly regulated company, like a water company, rates would have increased larger than what we anticipate with Bucks. But Bucks doesn't get carte blanche. They're regulated by the authorities.
Okay.
And it's easier to challenge their rates than it is the regulated company. We don't have to appear before the PUC and before the PUC nonsense. That's just a straight up complaint to the Court of Common Pleas.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Now's your chance, folks. Please come up.
My name's John Sullivan. I live in Weatherstone. I was just thinking about a question related to the future. Suppose another developer builds another big complex, and they traditionally have been turning the sewer systems over to the township, and now we're going to sell it. But what happens in the future if that happens? I didn't hear any discussion about that, you know.
Yeah, we're getting out of the sewer business.
Right, so a developer...
So if anybody wants to have other facilities, they have to deal directly with Bucks. But at the same time, the township maintains by law control over the 537 plan. The 537 plan is a sewage facilities planning tool. So we decide where sewers are going and what kind of systems are going in, and then they have to deal with Bucks on installing and permitting, all that stuff. But we're out of the sewer business, except we still will plan to have sewers, not sewers, and what kind of sewers.
All right, I was just thinking about it and thinking, well, what happens? Because the developers had to turn it over to the township.
Thank you.
Brian Curry, I'm not on any of the sewer systems. First thing is, I'd like to thank you very much for the final bills list now being on the website as opposed to being drafted. I kind of wondered about that for a number of years. It's nice to see it changing. My one question is, I think it was 2 meetings ago, I asked about the book value of the existing sewer plants, and I think the PFM people were going to get back to me. or they were gonna get back to Eric, and I know I dropped you a note. Haven't heard anything back. Do we have any numbers?
I think the valuation study and that book value, I think the book value is really, what's the value of those systems, right? Okay, of all the assets. So, as we discussed, I think after this, if there would be, we'd be proceeding with the sale, that information may be available. Right now, because you were through the bid process, that information was not, that valuation report was not available.
Okay, it's actually a little bit different than I was thinking of. I was thinking about book value, where book value can be less than the sale value.
Okay.
It always is. Yeah, it
Well,
always is.
in terms of the valuation of the assets, there are many different ways we were looking at this, so I'm going to defer.
We can't give it out yet.
No, I'm sorry.
If the board were to take action tonight, you can have it tomorrow. The problem is if they reject this bid, and we go out and rebid, we can't have.
Oh,
potential
well, I
bidders
understand that
knowing
part
that
about
analysis.
it. I have no,
Okay.
the valuation report
Right.
coming out afterward makes sense completely.
Okay.
And the way you value a system can be the book value, but we did not have good records to identify the book value. We don't have any actual cost, we didn't do the systems.
Okay.
We had to rely on developers just doing rough guesses about what they spent on the system. When we looked at escrows that were put up, that doesn't mean it cost that much or didn't cost that much. So our book value calculations won't be accurate, we just didn't have the records, we didn't build them. But each type of entity that has an interest in the system looks at different things in the system. Bucks County uses more of an income approach. The water companies use more of a capital approach. Because under PUC regulations, the book value of the system goes into your rate base.
Yes.
And then they add the profit margins and various things to that. So that's more of an analysis for a regulated company, not for the company that we're selling to. It's more of an income approach.
And you've also mentioned that we're getting caught again by, I'm gonna say weak or very few records of what the actual costs were. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Any comments from the board?
No. I'm ready to vote.
Where were we?
You had a motion on the floor?
I believe Mike read it and David
did.
second.
Oh, to award the bid, okay.
Does it tell us, the motion didn't include the bid price?
No, it didn't include the amount.
The amount's $4 million, 5-year rate freeze. They will keep the rates after the 5 years at your rates, unless the Bucks County rates are higher. Then they'll go to the Bucks County rates. And,
Matthew Meadows and Stonecroft will go down to 255.
yeah, Matthew Meadows and Stonewall come down to 255, substantially less than what they're at now.
Are you guys voting to do the deal right now?
That's what's on the.
Are you considering you represented that you were going to consider the $2 million, the offset on the purchase price? The reduction in the possibility of reducing the purchase price.
I think that was.
No, we discussed it, we don't agree to it.
But it was an option that wasn't.
It's an option.
It wasn't fully vetted. Why wouldn't you vet that before making the decision?
So you want us to go back to them, tell them to knock the price down to $2 million and give lower rates to Weatherstone and Ludwig's Corner,
Sure.
but not touch your rates. I mean, we could do that, I guess.
I'm
but
a big
on
winner
purpose.
here, either way, but I'm trying to, I want to do this, I hope we do this the right way.
I
It
think
seems to me like Weatherstone should, the other gorilla should get something back out of this.
Well, and what the one gentleman brought up about some athletic fields is an interesting concept, because that gets me over this personal surcharge concern that I have. So things like that can be explored. That's in the
I don't
best
think we
interest of the
can
whole
go down your avenue at this point, because it's been discussed that giving township money to a few is a problem with the surcharge. Now, if anybody brings that against us and watches this video, we'll see right through what we're doing.
You can't.
We're just bypassing the way to do it.
We don't have to watch the video, we're sitting here.
Well, you
Well,
can't-
yeah, I know, I mean,
Yeah, let me
in a
give
court of
you-
law, they could.
let me
Not really.
explain something. You can't really put something out to bid, get a number, and then say, never gonna voluntarily pay less. You're subjecting yourself to the same kind of problem that I was worried about in giving money back.
So you have no right to renegotiate this
Now what?
transaction? You have no right to negotiate any terms of this transaction
At
whatsoever?
this point, I would take it or leave it. If the board is fine with the terms, they take it. If they want to renegotiate something else, they reject it. That's what it comes down to. Because we put out the bid under certain terms, under terms of an asset purchase agreement. Very identifiable terms. Everyone had a right to bid on that. If people knew the price was only going to be $2 million, maybe Aqua would have bid. Maybe PA American Water Company would have bid.
$2 million with a rate offset.
Well, I mean, whoever could have bid, that changes the deal. So I don't think we can take the bid and then say.
I see a
"All right,
bigger
let's
problem with that.
Negotiate downwards.
We get it, it's a done deal.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jacina Breznak.
Can I ask you to come up to the microphone? Thank you.
I really don't think this microphone works.
Well, people aren't getting very close to it.
Well, I'll get close. My name is Jacina Breznak. My husband is Brian Breznak, who just spoke. I don't mean to be redundant at all, but coming back, the fact that you are voting on this right now, coming back to this fence issue, really scares a lot of people that you could sell it and they could just come along, because the most efficient thing for them to do to prevent, liability is to put up chain link fences around everything. It's.
Is this the fence?
Yeah, I mean, based on some feedback we got at the November 20th meeting, I think it specifically had to do with the fox hunting club, we did go back to Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority and said there were some concerns and questions at the last meeting about fencing and security. So we asked them if they have intentions of putting up any kind of fencing or any other sort of structures to preclude or inhibit the ability to do the fox hunting or other recreational activities like that. They said, no, we have no intention of doing that. Only thing we will do is running our sewer business is put security cameras at places where we deem appropriate to
So
put.
they are not going to change. Right now, we do have some post and rail with the wire mesh around some of the ponds. And this is everywhere. Weatherstone, St. Matthews Meadows, all these places have some form of security, but it is in keeping with Chester County.
The only change they mentioned would be to add security
But
cameras.
can that be written in this sale?
Yes.
Can this be made, like, no, you cannot do this?
Well, let's ask the solicitor.
I'm not sure what this is.
This, putting up chain link fences.
Yeah, but I'm not sure how many systems apply. I'm not sure whether it's a
Well, I
pond
mean,
or
it
how
might
they
be a
secure the
statement,
kids.
no chain link
No chain
fences
link
at all.
fences. If they do, or if they
They
do
can do any other
need,
fence.
find the need to put more security in, for
I thought you
whatever
could
reasons,
renegotiate.
have it be,
Yeah, well,
a post and rail with a
We'd
wire
have to say no
mesh
to it.
that is in keeping. Because literally, we could be driving down Fellowship Road, Westover Road, St. Matthews Road, and it could look like the oil company down, it'll become this industrial look.
Yeah, so if I can jump
This
in.
is Rob Seavey from my office.
With respect to Weatherstone, and because the real property of that system is being conveyed by easement, we could include something in the easements if they would agree to it, just to make sure it doesn't happen in the future.
That's what we're looking for.
That's what we're looking for.
So the easements,
Yes, the
as
actual.
written?
No, well, we haven't drafted them yet because we were waiting to see how much space any operator would need around the facility.
That's not going to apply to all the facilities.
No, but it would, in this case, it'd be Weatherstone. But not all of them are in situations where they may put up fences.
I can tell you, we'll make our best effort to make that happen.
Okay.
Um,
And you
And
would
we have
still
some
like letters from people?
We have some control of it, and some others we don't have
But
as
if
much
they're
control.
agreeing to
We're
it,
specifically talking about Weatherstone.
Right.
Can we stay on that?
Yeah, I think we
As
can
a
accomplish
resident,
that.
looking out over those.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want a stone wall, I don't want fences, that's my concern.
And that's
And
all.
that's what I'm hearing from?
No,
let me
we
find out.
can include that in the easement if they agree to it. We'd have to talk to them.
And just to be clear, when we spoke to them, they said they're not interested in putting anything in that's not there already. So kind of what you said, if it's there already.
Put it right.
Right, I know, I got it, I'm saying that's what we're gonna, that's what
That's
we're gonna
cool.
try to work on.
Okay, as long as we
But
heard
just their
that.
intent is what I'm
Can
trying
it
to
be
get across.
put in writing before the papers are signed?
That's all the stuff that happens between bid and closing, right?
No,
Lawyers, am I correct in saying that?
Well, there's minor alterations that need to be made to the document as approved tonight, put in the date and other finalized details.
So how will we know it's done? I mean, my house looks right over the pond.
All of our
And I
houses.
bought the
All of our
lot for
houses,
that
yes.
long, so I want, I don't
But
want
we
that.
would
There
drive-
also,
we would
so
be
that,
driving
if you're referring to the big pond
past
in
them.
the Weatherstone open space, there's also the conservation easement, which restricts what they can put on there already. The same conservation easement that's monitored by French and Pick says it can only be used for walking trails, it has to be completely, preserved as open space. They're still subject to that. So if that doesn't allow it then, or it doesn't allow it now, it's not gonna allow it in the future, and we can take additional steps as we go through this process prior to closing to ensure that, belt and suspenders.
Will you take those additional steps?
Oh, absolutely.
On the record?
Yes, I will talk to them and see if they'll agree to it.
Okay, if you get an answer,
Yeah.
can you just let Erica know? Erica can let the HOA know?
John is out now.
Would you be willing
Yeah,
to
just,
be
this,
answer? Yeah.
this is Rob Seaver from my office. He worked with me to represent the township. We're speaking of what we're going to try, and we'll have our best effort to do it. We see no reason why they wouldn't agree, but I can't absolutely do a 100% guarantee.
And Erica, if, when you have a determination, if you let me know, we'll do an email blast out to the community.
Sure. Okay, that's awesome.
Any other comments from the audience? John, you ready? Ready. Mike? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Done. Good work. You finished it.
Next item on the agenda.
Budget.
Hey, Dave, you want this one? I'll give you all the long ones since you're partying. There's a few long ones, by the way. Yeah.
Harriet's well. My well across the street. Martha has one. Yeah.
I know.
Setting the tax rate, county hearing on the case.
I'll be able to talk to them.
He wants to talk about it.
We're going to continue with the rest of the meeting, folks. Next is item 8, adoption of the 2018 budget for the township.
I move that the proposed budget for 2018 be adopted in the form presented to the Board of Supervisors, consisting of the general fund revenue sections entitled Taxes, Building Department, Culture, Recreation, Unclassified Operating Revenue, Other Income, Public Safety Inspections, in the total amount of $4,390,650, and expenditure sections entitled Administration, Governing Body, Buildings and Plant, Community Development, Culture, Recreation, Data Processing, Debt Service, Engineering Services, Unclassified Operating Expenses, General Government Administration, Public Safety, Code Enforcement, Emergency Management, Fire Companies, Police, Public Works, Winter Maintenance, Secretary, Solicitor, Legal Services, Tax Collection, Treasurer, in the total amount of $4,330,114, with a total net income of $60,536. The open space revenue in the total amount of $2,402,500, and a total expenditure of $2,402,500. The liquid fuel revenue in the total amount of $239,730, and a total expenditure of $239,730. The water sewer fund revenue in the total amount of $747,331, and total expenditures of $747,331, with a total of 18 pages inclusive.
Any comments from the audience? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Wow. Just racing along. Yeah.
After it's late already.
Certainly.
Okay.
I move,
Resolution to set the tax rate for 2018.
I move that the board approve resolution 28-2017 as submitted, setting the tax rate for calendar year 2018 on real property within the township made taxable for general township purposes. Be and hereby is levied at the rate of 2 9/100 mils, or, in other words, at a rate of no dollars and 20.9 upon each $100 of assessed valuation of taxable property.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's a tough one to read with us. Basically, this says we're not raising anybody's taxes.
That's right.
Any comment from the audience?
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
Do I hear a request for higher taxes out there?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is the new zoning hearing application.
And you don't have to set the wage cap.
You don't have to do anything with it?
No.
Yeah, what is this?
The zoning hearing application?
Yeah, this is for the pool?
Yes.
What happened to the tires?
It's Robert and Lindsay Herbine, 1560 Knob Hill Lane. And they're looking to, they have a single-family residence, it's 1.05 acres, and they are looking to install a pool, and it's an in-ground pool, and they will need to exceed the 15% maximum impervious limit by 2.32%. Our zoning officer right now will have a short memo, and that is, it's just basically received, so.
Okay, so I'm in support of that, doesn't matter?
No. Well, the planning commission will see it Thursday, right?
We'll have that available. We'll have this available.
Too
Yes.
early, Mike.
But the application will be, the meeting for the zoning hearing board will be scheduled shortly. And it's looking like the end of January.
Okay.
So.
So we don't need to do
No,
anything with that?
no.
It's just notification, okay. Next item is resolution application for PICO grant.
I move that the board approve resolution 29-2017, authorizing the application of the 2017 PICO grant application.
Second.
Any comments from the audience? Brian Curry.
What's the grant for?
Fellowship Trail Phase 2, that's what we're proposing. Fellowship Trail Phase 1 is almost done. So,
How is PICO
yeah.
involved with?
Part of their efforts is their way to give back to the community, and they like to do great infrastructure projects and passive recreation and all of that, so it's a very competitive grant, I have to say, from submitting over the course of a few years, so.
Have we done or gone for this before?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I thought it sounded
Another
familiar.
shot.
We
Yeah.
were awarded one in 2006.
Okay, all right, thank you.
What's
Thank you.
Fellowship Phase 2, Fellowship Trail Phase 2?
Sure, so just to give context, so the Fellowship Trail Phase 1 is the Weatherstone connection, and.
That's what's going on
Yes,
right
that's
now.
what's going on now, so it's the existing trail, building that connection, so we can cross Fellowship Road and get to the Vineyard Church. Now, where that existing trail is and where that ends, it will be the connection from there, along 401, past St. Matthew's Lutheran Church, to meet up here with the trail at the Evans Park, so.
Any other comments? We did have a motion, right?
Yes.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is public comment on non-agenda items. Harry.
Get up close to the microphone.
Okay, so you really can hear me. I have two comments, and I want to thank you for commenting about the increase in the engineering fees. I don't know many people who've applied for building permits, but I'm aware of 5 people whose permits have taken from over 1 year to over 2 years to come out. I assume you've gotten more than 5 complaints. After an application is made, questions are made to the engineers, answers given by the applicant, then new set of questions come up time and time again, questions which could have been given the first time. To me, this looks like stretching out the work so they can charge for more reviews. This is making me cynical, the number of people who are here complaining about this. And
Can I stop for 1 minute?
Yeah.
Do we have complaints on file? Because I haven't seen any.
I've heard so.
Okay, well, we're hearing them third party, or is Erica getting these complaints? Are you getting complaints?
I've heard 2 first party people do that.
Well, I know, but how do the supervisors find out that there's an issue if there is an issue? Or has Erica gotten the issues and dealt with it? I mean,
Right, I mean, as far as submitting an official complaint in a complaint form, I don't have that. Do I work
Okay.
through issues if there's a phone call, why is something taking a little while? Of course,
is there,
absolutely.
is there a overall issue with permits? In general, operation of them, how they're done?
I think the permit process is fine. I do understand that at times it can be just a matter of communication. And we have to acknowledge that, the code, it's something, it's a process where people are spending money and they need to understand the requirements. And so there's an inherent issue with trying to just get that done, and I know Cedarville's doing the best they can to answer questions and deal with that. We have had some changeover. That has happened. That is a fact. So in dealing with that, people do have to get up to speed. There's no doubt about that. So.
From what I've heard, there is a personality problem. And just exactly what Harriet's saying. 2 people have told me they apply, it gets bounced 45 days later, not 10 days later, 45 days, the maximum period. And they come back with the second thing, and it's bounced for some of the same reasons after they tried to fix it. So we have a problem here.
Okay.
I will tell people, anyone who tells me stories, I will tell them to call Erica, and that's where it's going to be dealt with. But it is true that the incredible turnover we've had in the zoning department.
Yes.
And
That is an issue. And our zoning isn't the easiest to interpret, so yes.
Yeah, and so they've got to learn how to do that. Anyway, that's, the second is an entirely different, this is a request about documentation of the cow barns. Karen Marshall, the Heritage Preservation Coordinator for Chester County, has requested that West Vincent's Environmental Advisory Council and Historic Resources Committee do a thorough documentation of the cow barns on the Green Coed property. This message is to convey that the EAC and HRC recommend that this be done as soon as possible. Even though these barns are not centuries old, they are an example of a legacy farm and are an important part of agriculture in the county. No matter how this property will be used in the future, the documentation is valuable. Please arrange for some of our professional historians, and we're lucky we've got quite a few of them in our township, to be allowed to document this part of the township's history. The recording should include, at a minimum, photos of all exterior elevations and accessible interiors, accessory facilities such as silos, garages, exterior and landscape features associated with the dairy operation, plus written building description, history, and a sketch floor plan. Now, this has some technical terms that I don't know about. Our preference would be to get a HABS/HAER level recording, large format photos and architectural drawings. What those letters stand for, I don't know. But that would take, getting that kind of recording would take professionals and funding that we don't have.
Yeah.
If we have time, one of our historians has suggested she could reach out to 2 different sites and ask about possibility for funding for that.
I think it's a great idea, but I would encourage you to start before the property comes to us. Start as soon as possible. So Erica, can you call Brian?
Yeah, as far as an assessment, I know that he's been, I hope, cooperative on looking at the various properties for tours. I think there's been some tours conducted for
The
some
open
facilities.
space went up through the cow barns.
Oh, okay, I thought the Historic Resources Committee also had a,
We went to some of the other different barns.
okay.
But we did not.
But we did not go to the
Okay,
cow barns.
all right, just wanted to make sure.
And this is a more detailed,
There's different type
than
of assessment.
the interior photographs we've been doing of the.
I wouldn't stop just at the cow palaces. I would, you know, the 3 silos, and also there's a cinder block structure that they composted manure and
Yeah, well, that's what,
bagged it.
what they're talking about is
Okay.
all of the features on the the property
Okay.
that will be the township.
But they have to get permission from NLT right now.
And-
To certainly have our permission.
Correct, and once we get done.
Especially anything you are gonna demolish.
Right, we have permission as soon as we own it, so.
Yeah, we can't give permission, but we certainly encourage them to give you permission.
Okay.
I already wrote his name, so.
Okay.
I just want to bring up the issue with Cedarville Engineering. Did you guys receive my December 12th email regarding the invoices and the reports that we received from Cedarville?
I got yours, and to be honest with you, I forwarded right away to our solicitor. I took it as litigious, and that's what we use it for, so.
Can we vote for an audit of all bills in this organization? Is there something we can do to put some, I mean, these rates have increased so dramatically that in.
I mean, the amount, the expenditures have increased, right? That's what you're saying, not
Like
the
there's
rates.
evidence, you know, I haven't done a full audit, right? I don't have all the details, but I got a lot of stuff, all right? And it seems like we're getting billed for the same thing over and over and over.
Right, okay, well, we do have somebody from the firm here that may be able to answer some of them if you have any.
And if I may, they send us monthly reports. I don't know if you guys read them. You have way too much to read, right? But these reports are, I'm going to say, I know they're buildups. So, but if you were to take, for example, the September report and compare it to the October report, and then go to the bill for the same period, those activities are not, there's so many activities on the bills that aren't represented in the report. You know, and that's very concerning, frankly. If this is the basis for where, hey, we're supposed to be reviewing this, and frankly, from a reporting perspective, for them not to provide us a Delta report, you know, a red line, hey, what changed from last month, is, for me, I would have, from a management perspective, I would have a real problem with that. All right? I have to look for the changes. That's ridiculous. So, what I'm concerned about is, I've shown you guys, since Cedarville has become engineers in the township,
Expenditures have gone up incredibly.
Incredible.
Yes, and we know reasons for a lot of them. You know, like bridges, road, you know, stuff, major expenditures.
Is anybody concerned?
I am concerned.
Joe, Buttonwood Bridge hadn't been addressed for 20 years. We're doing some of that. We have French Creek Bridge that was out. We're fixing it. We have Hollow Road Bridge, we're fixing it. All those things take permitting, take all sorts of things that were never, or haven't been done for years.
There's a lot of engineering services that have been provided these last couple of years. Okay, now,
Well, there may be
going
all
into
those, you
detail
know,
now.
honestly, you know, it could be every one of those fees are justified. But just looking at the bills from Matthews Meadows, how many times can they charge us for the Chapter 94 report?
Now,
Please.
is that actual, or is it just the wording, they kept using the same word?
Well,
Now I
maybe
don't
they
know.
misrepresented, you know, in the billing, what they're billing for, but, you know, if it was my business, I wouldn't be paying them. I can guarantee you that. I would, you know, first of all, I'd be pre-authorizing $5,000 bills. You know, I wouldn't give them T&M, you know, let them just carte blanche, charge, you know, what they do for what I don't even know what the scope of work is that they're doing. It's not disclosed. That's the unbelievable thing. It's just, guys, if I'm running this as a business, I'm concerned.
If only we could run it as a business.
Is that a report from your sewage?
No, it's you can get it under, right now. I'll give you copies.
Okay. Was there somebody else wanted this camera next? So I do want to, again, remind you that Joe and I have volunteered to be on a committee of residents that would help you determine how to distribute the $4 million that you're getting from Berks County Municipal, whosoever they are. Because I think it's very important to have residents' input into that. And so, again, I want to volunteer. Do I need to do a volunteer form, or have I told you enough?
We'll have discussions, and then as far as whether we're gonna have a committee or not, which probably would.
Okay.
So it'll be next year, I'm sure.
Coming soon.
Coming very
Okay.
soon.
The Fellowship Road, where it was a drainage ditch was put in on the west side of Fellowship Road where it joins up with Horseshoe Trail. Did you do your road tour? No. Well, then you can look at this when you go.
The concrete
Art's mentioned before the concrete that seems to be at the wrong angle, but all the way uphill from that inlet to the intersection, the side of Fellowship Road is disintegrating. I think it probably got damaged when they dug the drainage pit, and so the edge of the macadam is broken up. And so, but now, people are driving on it, running up against the giant riprap, whatever that is. And so it's deteriorating since you made ostensible improvements on it. I don't know why that drain needed to go where it was and how it is, but it's done a disservice to that part of Fellowship Road. I became aware recently that the Brincoed Farm Subdivision 3 application had been changed after the Planning Commission saw it before recordation. And so I wonder if you guys did that, approved that in your final change, or if that was a unilateral thing by Cedarville engineers. There used to be a parcel previously known as 8A that was a 7-acre parcel.
It had to be approved by the Planning Commission.
No, we did. The last time the Planning Commission saw that plan, 8A still existed. I was told by Nat Lands that 8A does not exist. That was wrapped back into parcel 8. So I want to know, was it Cedarville engineers that agreed that without coming back to the Planning Commission, or did you guys, in your right and power to do so, agree to that change? But otherwise, why did we record something that had a change that we may not have approved of?
Don't have an answer for
Then
you.
it's too late, right, if it's recorded?
Don't have an answer for it. We'll have to look into it.
Brian, do you know anything about that?
I'll have to look into it.
I asked this question.
When you figure it out, could you let not only Sarah know, but...
Well, I asked Brian, I learned about this from Brian last Monday, and I mentioned it to Erica after I saw Brian Sundermeyer. He said it was, while we were photographing the barn on the parcel formerly known as 8A, was when he said that was no longer a separate parcel. And I went, well, who made that decision? So you don't know. When our engineers, this is part of what happens to the engineer costs, their letters always say resubmission required when we get comments at the Planning Commission. Now that resubmission apparently means to the engineers, but not to us, and us Planning Commission. So if it comes to the Planning Commission and there's substantive changes and we say, okay, we're all right with compliance with our comments and the engineer's comments, but it doesn't come back for us to see did it comply with our comments. We're relying on Cedarville to check that and compliance with their own comments. But do we need a better audit trail of that? Because how could something like a lot line change that would have been a subject of a whole nother Planning Commission recommendation to you, how could it happen without anybody recognizing that was happening? Yeah, you're looking into it. Okay. And I agree about the engineering costs. I've just been really shocked, and I think part of it has to do with this. Every plan has resubmission required. Harriet, I don't know if Harriet and I have heard from the same neighbors, but one of the neighbors I heard from said they did a revision to their building application, and a new item that had been on the first submission was called out on the second set of comments. So either that's, as Harriet suggests, trying to flesh up the billable hours, or it was slipshod work the first time.
Noted. Any other comments? Yes?
Over the past couple of days, when we've had these nuisance of snowstorms, a lot of people that I know use 401. There have been accidents on 401, so they've been using other township roads. And the comment that I got from many of these people was that Flowing Springs Road was the best maintained road out of all the other townships. Now, I can't speak for all the other, all the other roads in West Vincent Township, only for Flowing Springs Road. So this is coming from a lot of my neighbors, so kudos, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is that a PennDOT road?
Half of it.
Any other comments?
Go back. I just want to know when you're going to go on the road tour and volunteer to go.
We don't know yet.
What was that question?
Okay, can we get a bigger van so that I can go on the road
No,
tour?
you're not going to be invited at all.
Thank you.
We're waiting for,
We'll find out when it is and follow it.
yes.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Yes.
The Christmas tree is just beautiful. I just wanted to tell you, I really like the tree out there. I forgot to tell you last time I was here.
Yay, Tim.
Tammy thanks you.
So, and their help with.
Yeah, she had a helper, the little elf over there. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
David.